Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to what I hope will be a truly insightful session where we will show how organizations are achieving early wins with Gen AI. And in order to do that, we plan to share a practical approach to successfully adopting AI and delivering tangible business outcomes. And this approach, by the way, will include not just setting the context for the AI opportunity, which is a component of reviewing recent advancements in the AI space, but it'll also include identifying and addressing key challenges, key areas of consideration that you must account for in your AI adoption journey to ensure that you're well set for success. And then finally, I think the most exciting component to this session is that we will bring this all together and make it come to life by sharing real stories from organizations that have successfully implemented AI solutions and solved a challenge or unlocked some form of ambition. And they will talk about their best practices, they'll talk about their lessons learned, and then ultimately provide a blueprint for you to be able to go back to your organization's post-discover and act on it. And this is a session that I am particularly excited to be a part of, and then also to bring to this audience because I feel like it's needed. Why? Because as exciting a topic as AI is, with as much focus and investment that's pouring into this space, there are still two conflicting market perspectives as it relates to AI. On one end, there's a real optimism, a sense of excitement on the promises of AI, particularly for the enterprise. We hear stories of AI-driven productivity gains, streamlined operations, personalized customer experiences, and we even hear of enhanced business models, all with Gen AI at the heart of innovation. Sounds great. But then there's the other side, a side that is a lot more complex. And ultimately, organizations are struggling with a fundamental question. Where do we start? And the reality is that while some organizations are achieving breakthroughs with AI, there are many more that are struggling with those fundamental complexities in the AI adoption journey. In fact, if you were a part of the keynote earlier today, you would have heard Antonio talk about the percentage of success that organizations have when implementing AI pilots and then transitioning that into production and ultimately delivering business outcomes. And you can see here, 80% of organizations today have said that they are experimenting with Gen AI. But only 10% of AI pilots move into production, and an even smaller percent actually go on to deliver a tangible return. And this leads to ultimately a reluctance in organizations investing real dollars, putting more money into AI without clear line of sight to a return. And I think that loops back to the purpose of today's session. We want to set you all up for success in your AI adoption journey by first and foremost identifying and addressing the key challenges that organizations face in the AI adoption journey and that limit them from moving AI pilots into production and driving those outcomes. And then we want to bring it to life with stories because that is ultimately how all of this becomes real. We can talk in practical terms about what it takes to succeed with AI, but it's not until it comes to life with real stories that we get a sense for what this actually means and what are the opportunities associated with AI and how are companies taking advantage of it. So let's first take a look at the opportunity itself. And you would have heard Neil kind of give his perspective on traditional AI, I think he called it, which is actually a funny term. Traditional AI, now there's this new instantiation of it. But he talked about what AI used to be, and then now, what are we seeing as of the recent years and the promises that AI presents to the enterprise based on those advancements. And I'm going to use Neil's terms. When we think about traditional AI, these are typically systems that analyze data, recognize patterns, and perform very specific tasks. Rule-based classification, prediction, and recommendation. That is, in essence, what traditional AI is. So if you think about how that then translates into use cases, take healthcare as an example. AI in healthcare could be trained to detect tumors in medical images, as an example. And again, these systems are really great at optimizing, classifying, and ultimately making predictions. But then there's Gen AI, which is a completely different thing. Gen AI is designed to create, to add something new. It doesn't just analyze that photo, it can actually generate an entirely new image from scratch. It doesn't just regurgitate existing data, as an example, in response to a question. It has the ability to write new stories, compose music, or even code software. In other words, as I said, Gen AI is not just reacting to the world, it's giving something new to it. And it does this through availability and access to accelerated computing and more efficient models that are trained on massive amounts of data, from text to images to audio, video, code. And it recognizes patterns in this data, and it is able to generate something new that mimics those patterns. That's how it happens. So what makes Gen AI so impactful? Well, it's about the flexibility. It's about the human-like understanding that it brings to technology. It gives you a new ability to interact with your data in a way where it feels like you're interacting with a human. Instead of just providing scripted responses, Gen AI has the ability to allow your organization to engage in realistic conversations. And it is, in essence, the cause for the recent wave of focus and investment and excitement that we're seeing in the AI space. And the race is on, by the way, to unlock the power of this technology and take advantage of it, particularly for the enterprise. But the cool thing is, which you'll hear about later, there are companies out there who are realizing success with Gen AI. But the tipping point is still ahead of us. It's in the future. And we can get there. But we have got to refocus the conversation on practical plans to implement Gen AI in a way that leads to tangible returns in a sustained way. And that starts, as I mentioned earlier, with identifying and addressing the key challenges associated with the AI adoption journey. And they really boil down to 4 different domains that we at HPE feel are essential to setting yourself up for success. Those areas are skills, data, architecture, and AI solutions. And I want to start first with what I believe is the most important one, AI skills. This translates to your people and their capabilities. At the end of the day, any transformation, especially AI transformation, is realized through the people that make it happen. And there's a certain expertise required to design, deploy, operate, and optimize AI models and AI infrastructure. And your organizations need these skills. And you can go about getting them in one of 2 ways. On one side, you can hire the right talent. And on the other side, you can grow that talent from within. But the reality is there is an AI talent shortage, as was mentioned in the keynote. So not only is it a practical approach to train, upskill, uptask your people to have the right skills necessary to drive sustained AI outcomes, it's also strategic because it is the people inside of your organization today who have intimate knowledge of the workings of your organization. And if you arm these people with the right skills not just to design, deploy, operate, and optimize these AI models and architectures, but also the right AI literacy from a user perspective to interact with these AI solutions in a way where it augments at the right level and delivers the right outcomes and the right experience for your internal and external customers. That's a game changer. That is a recipe for accelerated AI outcomes. And then there is the next challenge, which is data. We heard today that data is effectively the lifeblood of any organization, and data determines the effectiveness of the AI solutions that you deploy. An effective AI comes from personalized AI outputs that take into account the uniqueness of your business. In order for you to get this, it requires access to focused business proprietary data sets fed into these AI models that then give you the insights that you need that are unique to you and drive the ultimate outcomes that you're looking for. So it's very clear that you have to have a focused data strategy that leads to a data architecture, data pipeline, in order for you to unlock this value-rich data that means the most for your AI solutions. And if you consider the security, privacy, the proprietary nature of this data set, you have to consider the architecture or the platform that you run it on. Neil mentioned on stage today, this data that is most valuable to AI is typically on-prem. So you have to ensure that you have the right architecture to enable the AI models with this data to be activated. And ultimately, that is private platforms. They are the ideal solution for organizations that handle sensitive data, operate in regulated industries, or require customized solutions, and they are critical to delivering that personalized AI experience. So the platform, I want you to remember, the platform is extremely important to AI success. And AI platforms require complex architectural designs, which is why Fidelma mentioned the focus and investment that HP has put into building a full-stack certified platform and turnkey solution co-developed with NVIDIA to accelerate your AI deployments and increase your time to value. And I like to say private platforms for proprietary data lead to personalized AI solutions. And that links to the final challenge that we must address, which is solutions. And make no mistake, at the end of the day, all of this boils down to deploying solutions that deliver outcomes. That's the goal. And there are a lot of use cases in the market, both horizontal and vertical, that you have access to. Vendors have already developed some AI use cases and solutions which can be adapted and reused to accelerate your AI adoption. However, navigating the vast ecosystem of ISVs in the AI space can be a task. So that is why it is extremely important that as an organization, you first ask yourself a set of tough questions on the front end before you start approaching AI solutions and use cases. I think it's really important that you first understand what challenges are you looking to solve? What ambitions are you seeking to unlock? What does the inevitable AI-enabled organization look like for you? Once you have this picture and you're aligned on that strategy, that will then feed the use cases that you approach and the priority that you place on those use cases in which order, because it gets you closer to quick wins, which again is the purpose of today's session, how are organizations achieving quick wins? And it allows you to assess on an ongoing basis your performance against realizing your AI vision that you established at the onset. So that's it. It is AI skills, AI data, AI architecture, and ultimately AI solutions. This is the blueprint. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, that leads to the second phase of today's session, which is a panel discussion. And I have a set of pretty exciting guests that I'm going to welcome to the stage, who, by the way, among them all, have deployed dozens of AI use cases and are actually seeing returns for them today. So, with that being said, please join me in welcoming Chief Data Scientist for the German Federal Foreign Office, Hans-Christian Mangelsdorf, Chief Technology Officer and Principal Data Scientist for AI at HPE, Iveta Lachovska, and Executive Vice President and General Manager for HPE Operations, Mark Bakker. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Yes.
So,
Hi.
please take a seat.
Yes,
Thank you.
I will. Thank you.
So you've heard that the goal of the session, right, is ultimately to show how organizations are achieving quick wins with Gen AI. And my ambition, what I told the audience, is that I hope to provide a practical approach, which first starts with identifying those key areas of consideration in the AI adoption journey, but also to hear real stories. And that's where you come in, ultimately. And I think, by the way, for the audience's sake, we have a very unique setup of panelists here today. We have representation across the public sector with you, Hans-Christian, and then we have representation from HPE, which obviously is a private organization, and you, Mark Bakker. But I think the secret sauce to this panel is actually you, Iveta, because you're effectively the glue across all of this that makes it a reality, because you've worked directly with Hans-Christian's team as well as Mark Bakker's organization to identify these use cases and activate them and ultimately lead to the outcomes and returns that they're seeing. So I will be bouncing between these organizations or these panelists on an ongoing basis to get perspective from their organizations, and then hearing from you from a technology perspective, how does this actually get activated? But with that being said, I want to start first with you, Hans-Christian. Now, obviously, you are in the public sector. That presents a unique set of, I'll call them opportunities to consider. I'm going to call them opportunities to overcome and learn. But you're pioneering Gen AI use cases within the German Federal Foreign Office. So if you could do us a favor, tell us a little bit about what it is you're doing from a solution perspective, and then how did you prepare your organization from a readiness standpoint to start your AI adoption journey?
Thanks, Klesmi, and thanks for having me on the stage today. Maybe to set the stage in a way, so the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a 12,000 staff organization spread across 193 countries, including, well, around 400 IT colleagues that are keeping the system up and running. So we are in a bit of a privileged situation compared to a typical government entity because we have certain structures that already exist. But anyway, we started early on using artificial intelligence. That was like 4 or 5 years ago when we really started that journey that brought us to 2024, where we are actually on the tipping point towards, and I think you put it like, how did you put it? It's basically the tipping point towards production ready or
personalized AI.
Personalized and productive AI. So
one person listened for sure.
Yeah, see, that was a lecture. So we're really at that tipping point, and that's quite important. So what did we do? We basically focused on 3+1 thing. So that was getting the right talent. And again, that fits very well to what you said. I mean, really getting fresh blood on board that would add to our existing IT stuff, but focusing rather on rapid prototyping, data engineering, data science, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a specific kind of people that you need. We focused a lot on data literacy, because obviously a 12,000 people organization with staff typically in the age of 40 to 50, I would say, you need to explain things, right? I mean, you need to take away those fears and, well, not necessarily convince them, but make them aware of the possibilities and challenges that AI is posing. And then, last but not least, we were very strict in the sense that we defined a set of rules on data governance, but also on AI. So we published our first ever artificial intelligence charter, I think it was in January 2024, based on our data strategy that we had published a year before. And last but not least, and that's usually what I call the plus one, that's a bit the technology, right? I mean, if you send your data engineers somewhere to colleagues, asking them to do something, to find an AI solution, to produce something, they would typically ask you, Classme, what kind of tools should I actually use? So we spent a bit of time over the last 3 years to develop basically a private cloud, a platform that we are using, but that we're also making available to other ministries across Germany, so that our our data engineers, but also my data engineers, really focus on the problem and not on the tool set. So they are equipped in a way to allow them to become productive quite quickly.
Yeah, that's a good insight. So effectively, you kind of addressed the majority of the challenges that we talked about at the onset. You talked about the right skills, you talked about data, and you talked about architecture or the platform, as you mentioned it. But actually, I think I want to go to you, Iveta, for the follow-up on that, because you work closely with Hans Christian's team.
Yes.
And he mentioned how important it is to, abstract the technical component from the team so they can focus on the problem that needs to be solved.
Correct.
You're not abstracted from that. So can you talk a little bit about what was required from a technology perspective to really activate Hans Christian's vision for his organization?
Yes, so they're a very unique example because of the confidentiality of the data, the restrictions of the diplomatic world and what you can share and how you can handle things, which makes them very unique. And the fact that you're here and you talk about this is also a proof of the work we do and the way we handle things. So from technological perspective, on-prem, private cloud, security environment with very good foundations. And also my job is to keep with AI. And this is impossible. That's the situation because it's changing so fast and it's so rapid that you can be one step ahead. And what differentiates them and why we did succeed in this engagement and in this work is that they're early adopters. They're on top of the game when it comes to knowing the latest trends on the technological stack, on the platform stack, and we enable this. The skills you mentioned, the data preparation, the fact that when we started the project, it was not, oh, do you have the data? No, he was like, no, my team has it ready, prepared, waiting for you to start mixing things here and there. So being on top of the game when it comes to following the latest trends in platform, in compute, in algorithms, in open source, is very important things, and they fully embraced that. And us mixing everything together and having the skills while we are literally building a plane while flying it. In this case, GenAI was a very new topic. They're early adopters. They're the shining star within the German government, as an example. No, but that's not a compliment. That's the truth. Made a huge difference. And us making a very good recommendations, but not only recommendations, deploying things when it comes to the technological components, the platform, the state of the art of the algorithms was, I would say, a very good example of how things then moved into a production, exactly what you said, but not only moving into production, making a difference for the diplomats and the end users, and also transitioning them into a situation where they're not afraid to use that.
Go ahead.
If you allow me just to react to that one, because I think Iveta mentioned two important points. I think one of the recipes for success is that you have an organization that can actually receive what comes from outside. And that could be a piece of hardware that you simply roll into a data center and connect it, or have it connected by your own staff, right? It can be a challenge, but if you have colleagues that do that on a daily basis, it makes life much easier. And then obviously having colleagues that are familiar with the technology and at the same time, understand the DNA of the organization, right? If you just have one of those two things, that's typically a difficult thing, because then you are starting to do all the requirements engineering, which is not fun, to be honest. Consumes a lot of time and it's no fun at all. So these two elements, I think, are really game changers.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, so I guess I have one more question for you, and then I promise I'll jump off of you. I I want to close the loop on that circular chart that we were showing, because we talked about skills, we talked about data, we talked about architectures and platforms and technology in general. Use cases. Yep. I told the audience earlier that it's really important to have a strategy or a vision for an AI-enabled enterprise so that you can march towards that with the use cases that you implement. How did you go about targeting the right use cases, and did you have a strategy at the front end that guided you?
Yeah, well, maybe a few remarks on that one. I mean, probably one advice in the very beginning. If as a company you walk up to a customer and ask them, what are your use cases? I think that's the first mistake you can make, right? Never walk up to your customer and ask them, what are your use cases?
Noted.
Because what we noticed, and that's replying to your question, is you need to do two things. If you have an internal team, or even if it's a combined team of internal and external experts, you simply should walk, or you should simply stand up and propose something, right? Some easy stuff.
Yeah.
A simple RAG system.
Yes.
A simple machine translation system. A simple chatbot that is probably not even fine-tuned, nothing, has a nice GUI, something that is a bit fancy. So do that, right? I mean, just propose something. That's exactly what my team is doing. I mean, just coming up with things, could be a chatbot, right? And just pushing that into our organization, encouraging colleagues to play around. The advantage compared to things that you can use in a public cloud environment or just on the internet is that you can really reassure colleagues that that their data is going to stay in our systems. And that already makes a huge difference, right? You can tell them, play around. It's in a private cloud environment or even on premise. That's number one. Number two is, once you have started talking about AI and data in general, people will walk up to you and ask you, we have a problem here. We use Excel spreadsheets. Could we transform that into a small database? And then, okay, couldn't we use a chatbot or something or another piece of Gen AI to work on that data that we are just putting in a database? And there's a use case. Of course, then the question comes, how do we prioritize? And that's, again, quite straightforward. We would usually ask ourselves, okay, is that a use case that is relevant for the entire organization? Is that something nouveau, or is it just the standard chatbot? If it's nouveau, we would probably do it because we are a data and AI lab. Is it something that could be used by other ministries, et cetera, et cetera? So with these two approaches, this double approach usually gets you quite easily through this so-called requirements engineering process.
Yeah, I think that tracks very well with what I'm hearing as well. There's no shortage of use cases. Yep. Everyone has ideas and they bring them to the table, but that prioritization component is key so that you don't have everyone running in every single direction and no cohesive strategy as an organization. Mark,
yes,
I want to bring you into this because obviously, as I mentioned, Mark is the Executive Vice President and General Manager of HP Operations. He leads one of what I would say the most complex supply chains in the industry. But more importantly, you've implemented AI solutions to enhance and drive innovation within that space. And I guess I have the same question for you. How did you go about the readiness process, and how did you also prioritize use cases within your area?
So, well, thanks for having me as well. Let me give a little bit of context just to describe the landscape we're talking about within operations. What we cover for HPE, which is much like you, is an enterprise in itself. So when we talk about AI adoption in the enterprise, an operations organization like mine is a good playground to play in. What we cover is essentially three big domains. One is the front-end side of the house, where we engage with customers and partners around quoting, order management, invoicing, et cetera, those kinds of things. The second big piece is the global supply chain, in which we obviously source and build and deliver products and solutions to all our customers. And the third big domain we cover is the service and support side of things. So there is an element of break-fix, when something breaks in the customer's estate, break-fix. But also, when we talk about some of the likes of yourselves as customers when we work with you on installation and deployment of those solutions into your estate. And so this is a large organization, a lot of coverage of critical processes. And one of the number one objectives of this organization is to provide a superior customer experience. That's very important to realize. And when somebody comes up to me, our IT friends, or even my supervisor, the CEO of the company, which you heard speaking today, and says, Mark, we need to do AI in operations, it doesn't mean anything. What I need to do is to provide a superior customer experience. And from there, we will start thinking about, well, how can I do that? What do I need to fix maybe subpar experiences? And that actually ties well into what Hans Christian was talking about. We do not start from the perspective with what are the use cases you have, but rather looking into our operational environment. Where do we need to improve? What can we do better? What can we do better for customers? But also, it's a large organization. There's about 20,000 people that provide this customer experience day in, day out across the globe. And through surveys and feedback, et cetera, we get a lot of input from our employees as well, how difficult it is sometimes to do their jobs. A global supply chain like ours generates an enormous amount of data. Like in the front end where we engage with customers and partners, a lot of orders, a lot of quotes. In the supply chain, we actually have what I call an extended supply chain where we work with external providers, whether it is suppliers, whether it is manufacturing partners, whether it's logistics partners, and all of them generate data as well. And not necessarily is that data in one place, it's in multiple places. And oftentimes it's, requires things like cleaning of the data, management of the data. And so that's where it all starts. And our employees that are busy, and they will provide that feedback and saying, well, a lot of the work I do is manual work. Well, what does that mean, manual work? Oftentimes it's manipulating the data. It's cleaning the data, it's moving data from one place to the next, it's consolidating data in order to find the answer to something. And so we use all of those kinds of inputs to determine if I want to, one, provide a better experience for customers and make it easier for my employees to do their jobs. That's when I get to, okay, what opportunities do I have to solve problems? And from there, saying, how can technology help me do that? And then obviously we get into the whole realm of AI, the different pieces, the old AI you talked about earlier, as well as the generative AI. And we use all of it in different places.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's some similarities, right? You mentioned data and the importance of that, but you also talked about, listening to the organization, which you mentioned as well, and that then leads to the challenge or the opportunity to solve for, and then figuring out how you go about doing that, leveraging technology.
And there's the other input as well. I mentioned the customer experience that we want to provide. And when you engage with customers in a customer service environment, which is largely what we do, from the front end to the back end, all across that value chain, we engage with customers on multiple touch points. And every customer you talk to will say, look, I don't want to necessarily have to contact you. I do not necessarily want to chat with you, email with you, or even pick up the phone. I want a self-service, and if at all possible, from a technology, from a product point of view, I want self-healing, right? So that's where, then again, if you take a step back and you say, hey, from an experience point of view, we want this to be self-serve, self-healing, no contact. And so if that becomes the North Star, the next thing is, okay, how do I make that happen? Now, we're still far away from systems healing themselves, et cetera, but the opportunities are starting to come, right? But you need to listen. This is what, and my view is, everybody talks about the return on investment of AI projects, which obviously is an important thing to justify to our CFO and, the investments we're making. But it cannot be only on the back of, I invested $1 million here, I need to find $5 million in return. What it needs to look like, the ROI needs to include things like, am I providing a better service to my customers? are my employees more satisfied with the work they do? Do I actually provide a better service, and therefore customers say, you know what, I want to do more business with you because it's easy to interact with you, it's easy to work with you, right? So.
Could I just react to that internal dimension, because I think that's quite important. I mean, we are constantly making the experience that if you're solving 10 small problems of your colleagues, I mean, my team as a data and AI lab is a service provider, is an internal service provider in a way. So if you're solving 10 small problems, word of mouth is going to spread across the organization, and people are going to come up to you and ask you for similar support. And in this internal dimension, I consider that quite important. That could be purely on data questions, but I think increasingly that's going to be on AI questions as well. Yes. The thing like, couldn't we make it slightly different? I mean, it's all about innovation in a company or in an organization as such. So I think using that mechanism is quite powerful.
It is, and you know, it takes a little bit, let's say, the tension out of the system as well about, you know, AI being a dangerous initiative inside a company for employees, right? If you can democratize, you know, some of the development of these kinds of ideas, and I think, you know, there was the data on how many projects, and then, you know, the successful projects, 80%, you know, that don't make it, etc. I think in a way that's okay. You need to experiment to get to the North Star outcome, which is how do I continue to shift left? How do I continue to provide automation in the end-to-end experience? How do I get to this self-serve solution? And only by trying and involving your entire employee base, you know, will help to get there.
Yeah, so I do want to spend a little bit of time on the specifics of the use cases, but before I do that, Iveta, I want to know from your perspective, in the readiness process, from a technology standpoint, having worked with both Mark and Hans Christian's organization, are there any differences that you notice in terms of getting them set up for success?
So I think is the glue between those two stories is HP services supporting both. The least common denominator between both scenarios is that they operate in highly complex, highly restricted environments. Mark, sea of data, very complex data, and what you said is very true. Just if you remove the failure aspect, and you did because you are visionary, you enable the people, just give a complex data to a group of people, very smart people, and cool gadgets, environment, platform, as Hans Christian mentioned, magic's happened. And you remove the equation of how many percent you're going to fail, and we really want the return of investment. Yes, you clearly need an ROI, and both of them have a baseline of experience. The experience for our HP customers and the baseline of experience for the diplomats that the Hans Christian needs to serve. That baseline needs to be there, because then you can go to your stakeholders, to the people who gave you the money and the trust, and say, see, this was the level of customer support we could provide, or how many parts we can ship globally, or how many happy diplomats handling different letters in different languages we could handle, and this is how we improved. So I would say, least common denominator, data. You cannot have an AI strategy if you don't have a data strategy.
Absolutely.
As simple as that. If you work with CSV files, then the next step is predictive analytics, not AI. AI and Gen AI is a Nordic star, but there is a homework to be done. So the maturity of understanding that it cannot be brute forced through that journey is one thing, and then a baseline for measuring the success. Baseline for the different use cases or the different challenges, or how you're going to prove that it worked, and you need to extend the solutions are two key components. And again, the horizontal layer are people. Really just management of change, train people, enable people, give them cool environments, give them access to data, and it will work.
That's a really good point on management of change, actually.
Yes.
And for that, Hans Christian, I'd like to go to you.
Yeah.
I want to hear about those use cases. So can you talk us through the specifics of the use cases that you have in action right now and what that adoption journey looked like? And if there was any sort of management of change component embedded within it to sort of incentivize employees to interact with it.
Well, a few thoughts on that. I think you need top-level management to understand that there is an opportunity, but at the same time, gives them some sort of reassurance that we're not just going crazy and wild, right? I mean, if you have a team of data people, data engineers, data scientists, they always want to do everything that is possible.
Yes,
and it's typically, from a technical point of view, it's usually quite feasible. So that was our approach, saying, okay, let's put down, I think it's 8 principles in an AI charter. And one of the core principles is, okay, let's use AI and Gen AI to support our decisions, but make sure that an AI never takes a decision, right? I mean, especially in a political context, right? So what we are doing, we are negotiating. Diplomats are negotiating. They are writing papers. They are trying to come up with creative solutions, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of things are based on paper, well, not physical paper anymore, but things that you write down. So text is the main source of data, or is the main, it's the main form of data that we are using. So what does that mean? That means that making sure that there is a certain appetite to adopt AI, you need to simply explain the advantages of using that form of data that is typically stored in databases, that is sometimes still stored in intranets, or even sometimes stored in PDF documents, that this is not going to go away, but that we are going to extract what is in there. Making sure that you can somehow accommodate or react to that feeling that many of our colleagues would have. And the feeling is, we know quite a lot of things. We have thousands of people working in the organization. But for God's sake, how do we make sure that we retrieve information and do something with it when we really need it? And so you ask about the management of change. And the management of change is really about, it's all about talking colleagues through different use cases. That could be writing speeches. That is providing an AI, a Gen AI tool to brainstorm solutions. Has some implications, obviously. That could be some rather easy things like managing our internal knowledge base. I mean, allowing colleagues to simply ask a machine, where do I get a car from if I want to go from A to Z, or something like that. Up to cases that are probably a little bit more complex, which is analyzing the stream of information that is coming from our embassies and really extracting those hidden treasures, those informations that probably a person would ignore or not really see. But again, it's all about spending quite a bit of time explaining things, and at the same time, always coming back to those principles, taking away the fear, because you know and you can reassure colleagues there are some principles. And maybe a last case, because that's one that's quite high on our agenda, we are also providing, obviously, services for citizens. So as a Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that's visa abroad, that's consular services if German citizens are having an issue in a foreign country. So again, here we are currently looking at the way AI can actually help us, make us faster, quicker, reduce the workload for our colleagues to allow us to refocus on real human-to-human interaction. And again, here, you need to make sure that both from a technology perspective, colleagues know what you're talking about, and that they still feel reassured that you're not doing some wild magic somewhere, but something that still, although AI is a statistical method in a way, is still controllable.
Yeah, they have to be confident in the output. So
exactly.
If it's fair to say, you're allowing more meaningful interaction between the value-rich data in your organization for more human-like engagement for your people, as well as the citizens that you support. Is there any sort of outcome or result or improved experience that you could speak to?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, one thing that we already implemented is call it a citizens chatbot or whatever. I mean, simply allowing citizens to quite easily communicate, especially with missions abroad, asking standard questions like, where do I get a new passport from, et cetera, et cetera. So that's dramatically reducing our communication effort and making space for other things. Then obviously, everything that is similar to a diplomatic co-pilot where you could, in a secure way, brainstorm with an AI system, that's in a better phase. And then again, as I said, the next big thing is really integrating AI into our visa systems and into our consular systems. But that's definitely something for 2025.
Nice. Same question for you, Mark. Obviously, you talked about the challenges that are presented to you.
Yeah.
That should then translate into solutions that you build or buy and implement. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you've done and any results you've seen?
Sure. And to answer the first part of the question you asked about MOC, right, management of change related to this, it's actually, if you build, the right positioning in the company and set kind of the right tone and why this is important, I think the fear goes away. Back to my point earlier, is that we're trying to solve customer problems, right? That's our job as an organization. Early on, I positioned, call it digital transformation, as one of our key priorities and key objectives, with the intent to improve the customer experience, as well as the employee experience, make it easier for them to do their jobs. So the incentive is for everybody there to look into this and try and figure out what makes sense. And so we've been working on different, initiatives along the way. One very big one has been about, data availability, data visibility, et cetera, because without that, as Iveta talked about, you can't do much of any of this. So that has been the number one priority. From there, we've done, we're currently with over 100 projects. Some of them are live, some of them are in progress, across the different spectra of AI, generative AI, predictive, prescriptive analytics, et cetera. Simple examples there are within our support environment. I talked about the reactive break fix versus proactive. And one of the things we're doing is basically looking at, can we use AI to give us better insights into when we expect certain parts or systems or solutions to fail. And rather than having a lot of spare parts inventory out in the field waiting for something to happen, is basically analyzing when do these failures occur and do the proactive replacement of certain parts. We just have to send it once, get it done, and you don't have to store, which, one, makes us, from a customer point of view, obviously a lot more proactive, but we also save a lot of money because we do not have to store so many parts, right? So that's one example. Another area is in our supply chain environment, where with the portfolio of products that we have, there's something which is called a bill of materials. Some of you may be familiar with that concept. And for our solutions, that bill of materials which goes in there can be very long. Products need to be set up in the system. All the parts need to be set up in the system, and that needs to be done with accuracy. Now, whenever there's manual work, there's mistakes that can be made. And so what we've done is leveraging AI capabilities to analyze all the BOM setup, identify mistakes before a human being would have to sit there and sift through all this stuff, making sure that everything is accurate. So it helps everybody in that sense. And then, of course, from a supply chain point of view, the big opportunity there is for all of us to be more accurate from a demand forecast point of view. If we know what our customers are going to buy and order from us, we can position all the material in the right places at the right time. And so we can do a lot with AI in our forecasting environment, in our demand planning environment, to predict better what demand will come to us when almost at the lowest level of the parts, so that we have those available, which in the end lets us do our delivery faster, right? Our conversion of an order into a shipment will be faster, which leads to customers being more happy with us, and it helps our employees again to provide a better service that way. The last one, which is the most straightforward one, is everything around chatbots, the virtual agent. We apply this in the front end when we talk about configurations and a customer asks for a quote, and this agent can actually generate a much more predictable outcome of, if you order this configuration, this is when we can deliver it to you. But also in the back end, in the service and support environment, where customers can ask questions and the chatbot will provide more answers based on this. And in that environment, you can imagine our portfolio, our solutions, there's a lot of technical information when customers need support. It's hard with turnover in your technical support department to keep people trained at the level of what is required. And so having the ability to, even not from a customer point of view, but for your own support agents to be able to leverage generative AI solutions that go through all your databases, all your knowledge management tools, etc., to come up with quick answers to the questions your customer may have, will provide that better service. And the agent will feel better about it because they feel more enabled, more capable, etc. So back to that MOC thing again. If you approach it that way, there's no fear of anything because it will actually help everybody to just do a better job.
Yeah, it seems like you checked all the boxes in terms of,
Well, the only one is my supervisor asking, how much money did you spend?
That's important.
Doing all
that's
this
really
stuff.
Important. You can't discount that. But you talked about streamlined operations and
Yep.
improved employee and customer experiences.
Yeah.
So that's that's kind of everything all in one. But almost at time for the audience, and I kind of want to ask each one of you rapid fire if you can share insights on what's next for you in your journey, and then anything that you feel like you want to share with this audience to better set them up for success. I'll start first with, you've been nominated.
Ladies first.
Ladies
Sounds
first.
great, yeah. Okay, so I think culture, people, environment, and baseline for success. One of the very common things is that when I interact with customers, it's that someone told them to do AI, and Mark also mentioned that, but they don't have baseline of how are they going to measure progress. It's the thing that everyone needs to have in place. Data, sort out your data, have initiatives around data, the volume, the variety, the velocity, because algorithms are very hungry, and they perform better the more data you have. The better organized and the more knowledge you have on those patterns. And then it comes again to people and how they interact with this data. In terms of the current trends and factors for future success, it's a rapidly changing environment, not being afraid making failures, having project delays or challenges to decide which stack, because it's a very common thing. If the environment is changing so fast, if the algorithms are very powerful, there are very few people who could understand them, it just takes time to mature, especially in the context of an enterprise or highly secured environment with a lot of constraints. So those are part of the constraints we have to operate with, and we have proven that we can succeed in those, but the baseline of measuring success, having your data sorted, and enable your people, I know it sounds boring, but turns out to be
Sounds essential.
essential,
Fundamental.
fundamental.
Mark, what's next and any closing?
What's next? Yeah, no, obviously we're going to continue the journey. For us in operations, we do three things, that are related to this, and, they will circle back. First of all, I mentioned our work in the global supply chain, and that is where we actually built a lot of the AI systems that we hope to sell a lot of to, all of you, our dear customers. And so we will continue to do that, continue to scale. Antonio talked about the direct liquid cooling capabilities, which we're going to expand so we can do more and more of build-outs of AI solutions for customers. Number two, we have in our professional services organization, we have a professional services AI delivery team with skilled and trained practice leaders and employees that can help all of you, to deliver AI solutions for you. And then number three, we will continue to work within our own operation. The over 100 projects that we are working on, we continue to scale the ones that work. We continue to, try out new things, etc. All with the intent to be one of the best demonstrable use cases of an enterprise company that has adopted AI.
Yeah.
With the circle back to when we do that right and we can show you all of that, we can actually sell more hardware, sell more services, etc. That's one of the missions that I'm on. One, we want to provide a superior customer experience, which is important for all of our customers and partners, and do that the best possible way, but also showcasing that in an operations environment, how you can adopt AI and do it well.
Thank you. Hans Christian, I'll leave you.
Yeah, well, maybe also three thoughts on your question. The first one is certainly 2025 is the year where we want to push AI solutions towards productive use in the house. So that's number one. Number two, and you need a bit of context for that, given the fact that each and every German federal ministry has nowadays a data and AI lab, and given the fact that we as Ministry of Foreign Affairs are the ones already providing essential data and AI platform for analytics, we want to make sure that with the next version of what we call Plane 2.0, we are really providing some sort of data ecosystem, a platform, a technical platform, an ecosystem to really co-develop and share data and AI solutions. So that's really our top objective, and we are quite close to achieving that one because three, I firmly believe that we are coming to a point where we as a federal government, and I'm not speaking as a Ministry of Foreign Affairs official, that we as federal government would really benefit from an even increased cooperation among ministries, because you have similar use cases, and given the fact that you now have a common platform that is sufficiently powerful, that is a private cloud, you can easily put things together and increase efficiency. And then you're also coming to we also have a budget line. I mean, we're not calculating EBIT and EBITDA, but budget is always a thing. So that's probably the third point. And if I may just add a fourth one, I know it should always be
Back
3
to your
points.
3 + 1.
Yeah, that's my 3 + 1, so you caught me on that one. But the fourth one is quite essential as well. I mean, we want to make sure that we have a very powerful ecosystem also of suppliers, of partners that can, upon demand, quickly reply to what we actually, that could be hardware, that could be software, that could be expertise. So we're putting quite a bit of emphasis on collecting the right kind of people and companies around us, because we ourselves are a provider. And you never walk alone if you're a provider. You always think in partnerships and networks.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I gave you the 3 + 1.
Thank you.
That concludes the questions. I want to thank each of you for joining me and sharing your stories and your readiness journey, and then also some insights on challenges you faced and what's next for you ultimately. And with that, I asked this audience one final question. What is your end AI destination? And I want you to really think about that and know and trust that HPE has the capability to help you get there by focusing on the right fundamentals in the AI readiness process to get you well on your way and realizing success. Thank you all. Have a great day.